Now, just over a year ago, my next guest was an activist anti-war figure inside Russia, opposed to Russia's military operation or invasion, as it is more properly described and as I always describe it. She was opposed to it, she demonstrated against it, and then someone took her to the Donbas to see the reality on the ground, as lived by the Russian-speaking people of eastern Ukraine for 8 long years at the hands of one president after another, who'd come to power initially as a result of the violent coup d'etat in Kiev. And what she saw there so profoundly affected her that she has been returning to the Donbas over and over again. She is a translator, but she is now best described as a volunteer in Donbas, trying to help the people there who continue to be bombed and shelled every hour of every day, this time with Western-supplied guns. Her name is Masha Lelyanova, and I'm very glad to welcome her to the mother of all talk shows. Masha, thank you for joining us. Did I explain your situation correctly? If so, say more about it. If not, please correct it.
Yes, everything's correct. Thank you very much for having me on your show, Mr. Galloway. That's true. About a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, I was protesting on the streets of Moscow and not being able to cope with all this. Left Moscow for a Far East shelter, asylum, or Noah's Ark, if you will, a rehabilitation center for baby seals, where I spent all the spring and half of summer. And after that, I returned to Moscow and went to Donbas with an American journalist, John Mark Dugan, in whose studio I am now. And that trip changed everything and actually brought some meaning into my life.
Tell us what it was that you found there that changed your life.
I found there people. I talked to people who told me what really was happening. To be honest, I thought that they would tear me apart because I'm Russian, that they would blame me for all the devastation around them, for all the horrific things that happened. And instead, they were thanking me for being there and for translating for John, for bringing humanitarian aid that John had with him for these people. And it was incredible. And the more I talked to them, the more stories I heard, the more I understood that everything I knew was not true. That everything I knew was like 180%, so completely opposite to what the reality was.
Give us an example, and who was responsible for that misinformation or even disinformation that you had been fed? Were you following Western media sources, for example?
I was following the Western media, yes. I was following all the channels all the Telegram channels that really supported the narrative of the Western media. It never even occurred to me to look at what the Russian media was saying. I was thinking that it was all lies, and it was really. I understand that it was an absolutely wrong approach, but I honestly never gave a chance to the Russian media at all. But I had to get some information from somewhere, and I thought that the Western media was a more reliable source, and that was very wrong, as wrong as it only could be. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a good way of putting it, as wrong as it only can be. Well, I'd like to thank John McDougan for taking you there.
I'm very grateful to him as well.
It made such an impact on you. Yeah, we must all be. Now, you were were so affected by it that you've been regularly returning. How have things changed in the last, well, that'll be about 9 months or so since you first visited? How have things changed? In what way have they gotten better? In what way are they still the same? And if any, in what way are they worse?
Well, since August, when I went there for the first time, till now, I have been there 8 times and delivered humanitarian aid to all areas of Donbas, that being from Mariupol to Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, so the whole area. And as for what got better, what got worse, well, for example, if we talk about what got worse, one of the places that we visited in August was Svetogorsk, which is now under Ukrainian control. That definitely got worse because there is no way to bring humanitarian aid there, and God knows what's going on there now. In terms of what got better, we can have a wonderful example of the city of Mariupol, which is being rebuilt. And every time I go there, I see the incredible speed of construction, renovation of everything. Like you can see where there was total devastation. Now there are new windows. Now there is a new restaurant opened, a new cafe opened. It's really amazing and very inspiring. The roads are fantastic there because they're all rebuilt. They're all new. So the construction is happening where the Ukraine is not shelling anymore. Well, it's too far for them to shell, apparently, too far for them to bomb. As for the areas where they do reach, of course, nothing gets better there. Donetsk, Volnovakha, Makeyevka, Gorlovka, all these cities are under constant fire, under constant shelling. And of course, you cannot talk about any improvement as just yet because the cities are being terrorized by Ukraine. And unfortunately, all the weapons that are supplied to do that are Western weapons. So they get more and more and they use it against civilians.
Yes, quite obviously, as indeed they had been doing for 8 long years, as the minutes of the OSCE amply testify, although they are no longer in the public domain. Enough screenshots of them are easily found. The more you look at it, Masha, the more impossible it seems that in any outcome of all this, that the Russian-speaking people in Ukraine could ever go back under the governance of the authorities in Kiev. The country is obviously going to be partitioned, isn't it? And if so, what parts? I mean, for example, can Odessa possibly be left under the control of Kiev when it is such an iconic Russian city? It seems impossible that this military operation could fail to liberate Odessa. And if Odessa, then what about the Russian people in Transnistria, now threatened by Romania and Moldova and Ukraine and NATO? So the more you look at it, the more you see the partition will have to be drastic, won't it?
Well, it is drastic on many levels. You see, before the special military operation began, for example, Mariupol was really pro-Ukrainian. It took the devastation of the city to happen for people who stayed there to realize who the real enemy was. And then they all voted pro-Russia. They all voted to be with Russia. I really hope that this fate will not happen to Odessa or to Pridnestrovye or Transnistria that you said. I really hope that it's not going to happen. But this clash or the separation of Russian and Ukrainian is happening on every level. The problem is the people there are all Russian and Ukrainian. You can't separate this. It's like you would choose, okay, my leg is Ukrainian and my arm is Russian. How do you do this? I said it before and I would probably be really hated by Ukrainians for saying that, but we are the same people. It's impossible to separate it. It's artificial. It's absolutely wrong. And it's totally insane that this separation is happening, that this division is happening, the division into Russians and Ukrainians, because, well, there is no division, honestly. So I really hope that it won't happen to Odessa and it won't happen to Transnistria, but, well, who knows? Who knows? The craziness of this
Well, look,
whole war
lastly,
is such that anything can happen.
Lastly, Masha, it's a difficult question to answer. You may not even want to hazard a guess, but what you've described is the sense of epiphany that you experienced when John brought you to Donbas, which turned your view 180 degrees. Your former activist friends who were against the war in the beginning, who demonstrated against the war, how many of them do you think have experienced similar changes in their outlook, and how many have remained entirely opposed to the Kremlin and their war effort?
Well, my friends are stubborn people. They are as stubborn as I was. And it is my belief that for them to change their mind, they would also have to go there with open eyes and open hearts and open ears. Otherwise, there is nothing I can tell them to move them, to change them. However, those people who were on the edge, if you will, not really knowing, but not really having an exact opinion, just being in this state of shock and horror of how to live in this horrible, crazy war, how to live in this situation. Those people did, many of them did come around and listened to me. And I received a lot of feedback from so many of them, even from those who, for example, didn't spoke to me for the last 10 years. They found me on social media, on Facebook or anywhere, and thanked me, because it was like literally now is the first time since the beginning of the war that I can breathe without shame that I have not left Russia. I received comments like that, or comments like, thank you so much for my daughter. Now we talk to each other. You can't believe how much you did for our family. Because people divorced because of that. People stop talking to their children, stop talking to their parents, stop talking to their siblings because of that. This is something that cuts the family, by the meat. It's insane. And yes, there are many who did thank me for speaking out, for getting out into this media field, and because now, or at least there were many who thanked me for helping them to now understand how a relative or family member thinks, so they now know how to communicate.